Today we're taking a deep dive into the most terrifying sea creatures ever dreamed up by sailors who had every reason to be afraid of the water. Number 1, the Kraken. Off the coast of Norway in the 1700s, sailors kept returning with the same account. Calm water, a whirlpool forming out of nowhere, then the sea itself beginning to rise. In 1755, Bishop Erik Pontoppidan gave the creature its first official record, describing something so massive its back could be mistaken for a chain of small islands over a mile across. Some fishermen claimed the kraken was so large that its arrival brought fish up from the deep with it, making the surrounding waters unusually easy to fish. Right before the ship anchored, they vanished completely. Ships that stumbled onto a real kraken rarely got a second chance. Massive limbs would rise out of the calm and wrap around the hull, dragging the vessel under, whole, and by the time anyone on shore noticed, there was nothing left to explain where the crew had gone. Sailors avoided entire stretches of ocean for decades, convinced the creature was still down there, waiting for the next ship to get too close. Number 2. Scylla. In Greek mythology, sailors navigating the Strait of Messina faced an impossible choice. On one side of the narrow channel waited Charybdis, a whirlpool that could swallow an entire ship. On the other side waited something worse. Scylla had once been a beautiful nymph, until the sorceress Circe, driven by jealousy, poisoned the waters where she bathed and transformed her into a monster with 6 heads, each mounted on a long serpentine neck, and 12 legs dangling uselessly beneath her. She made her home in a cave high on the cliffside, low enough to strike at passing ships. When a vessel came within reach, all 6 heads would lunge at once, each one seizing a sailor and swallowing him whole while his crewmates watched, helpless to stop it. Homer's Odyssey describes Odysseus choosing to sail closer to Scylla rather than risk Charybdis, accepting the loss of 6 men as the price of survival. It's one of the earliest recorded examples of a captain doing the math on how many people he could afford to lose, and just how cold that decision really is once you're the one making it. Number 3. Jörmungandr, the Midgard Serpent. In Norse mythology, Jörmungandr wasn't just a sea monster, it was the sea itself, in a sense. Born to the trickster god Loki and the giantess Angerboda, the serpent was cast into the ocean by Odin as an infant, banished for the threat the gods believed it would one day pose. Instead of dying, it grew. It grew so large that it eventually circled the entire world, gripping its own tail in its mouth, holding the oceans together at the edge of everything. Sailors who ventured too far from shore told stories of massive coils breaking the surface, long enough to be mistaken for a chain of reefs, right before the water around them began to move on its own. Norse legend holds that Jörmungandr and the god Thor were fated enemies from the beginning, destined to meet only once at Ragnarok, the end of the world. When that day comes, Thor will finally kill the serpent, only to stagger 9 steps and collapse, poisoned by its venom. 2 ancient enemies born for a single fight, and neither one walks away from it. Number 4. The Sirens. Not every monster needed claws or teeth. In Greek mythology, the sirens killed with something far harder to defend against, their voices. Half woman, half bird, the sirens perched on a rocky island surrounded by the wreckage of every ship that had ever sailed close enough to hear them sing. Their song was said to promise sailors exactly what they most wanted to hear: glory, knowledge, the comfort of home, and it was impossible to resist once you were within range. Men would abandon their posts, dive into the water, and swim toward the voices without a second thought, only to be torn apart on the rocks below or drowned before they ever reached the shore. When Odysseus sailed past their island, he ordered his crew to plug their ears with wax and had himself tied to the mast, desperate to hear the song and survive it. He screamed at his men to release him. They didn't. It's one of the only stories where a monster never had to move an inch, because the real danger was never the sirens themselves. It was what people were willing to do once they heard them. Number 5. Umi Bozu. In Japanese folklore, not every sea monster announced itself with violence. Umi Bozu, whose name translates roughly to sea monk, was known for something far quieter and to sailors far more unsettling. On nights when the ocean had gone completely still, a massive black shape would begin to rise out of the water without a sound. No splash, no warning, just a smooth, hairless dome breaking the surface, sometimes described as taller than the mast of the ship itself. Fishermen who encountered it said the air would grow cold, and the sea around the boat would go dead silent, as if the water itself were holding its breath. Some accounts claim Umi Bozu would simply stare at the vessel before sinking back beneath the waves. Others say it demanded a barrel from the crew, and if given one without a bottom, would use it to fill the ship with water until it sank. Sailors along the Japanese coast developed a specific ritual for calm nights, keeping a hollow barrel ready at all times, just in case the sea went still and something enormous decided to rise. Number 6. The Ningen. Unlike the others on this list, the Ningen doesn't come from ancient mythology. It comes from modern fishing crews working the freezing waters of the Southern Ocean near Antarctica, an area so remote and hostile that almost nobody is out there to see anything at all. Reports describe a massive humanoid figure, pale white, sometimes estimated at over 20 metres long, with a smooth, featureless face and limbs that end in what witnesses describe as fins or flippers rather than hands. Most sightings happen at night or in heavy fog, glimpsed just below the surface or briefly breaking it before disappearing again without so much as a ripple. No photograph has ever confirmed it. No body has ever been recovered, despite decades of rumours circulating among crews who work that stretch of ocean. And that's part of what makes it different from every other creature on this list. The Ningen isn't a story passed down for centuries. It's a rumour still spreading right now, reported by people with modern boats, modern instruments, and no obvious reason to lie. Whether it's a genuine unknown species, a misidentified whale, or something else entirely, sightings continue to come out of the Southern Ocean to this day. Number 7. The Bunyip. In Aboriginal Australian folklore, the Bunyip doesn't live in the ocean. It lives in the swamps, rivers and billabongs scattered across the outback, waiting in murky water for anyone careless enough to wander too close after dark. Descriptions vary wildly between different Aboriginal groups. Some say it has tusks, others a horse-like head, others feathers or a tail like a seal. What stays consistent across almost every telling is the sound. Witnesses describe a deep booming cry echoing across still water right before someone goes missing near the shoreline. Early European settlers heard the stories from local communities and soon started reporting their own encounters. Strange bellowing at night, unexplained tracks pressed into the mud, livestock found dead near the water's edge for no clear reason. Parents used the Bunyip to keep children away from dangerous water, and it worked because entire communities avoided certain billabongs for generations, passing the warning down long after anyone could remember exactly why. Something, they were certain, was still down there, waiting for the next person who got too close. Number 8. The Gloucester Sea Serpent. In August of 1817, the harbour town of Gloucester, Massachusetts became the site of one of the most well-documented sea monster sightings in American history. Over several weeks, dozens of witnesses, fishermen, ship captains, and ordinary townspeople reported seeing a massive serpent moving through the harbour, its body rising and falling above the water in a series of humps as it swam. Estimates of its length ranged from 60 to over 100 feet. Some witnesses claimed to have fired at it directly, watching their shots do nothing as the creature simply submerged and resurfaced somewhere else entirely, unbothered. The sightings were taken seriously enough that the Linnean Society of New England formed a committee to investigate, collecting sworn testimony from multiple witnesses independently, all describing strikingly similar details down to the number and shape of the humps. No body was ever found, no conclusive evidence was ever produced, but unlike the myths that came before it, this wasn't a story passed down from centuries earlier. It happened in broad daylight in a harbour full of people, and nobody involved ever recanted what they saw.